As you might already know, the configuration from your joystick button bindings from Flight Simulator 2020 are not directly mapped to Flight Simulator 2024, which sometimes results in strange situations. In this video, we're going to look specifically at the Thrustmaster T.16000M mic, the joystick, not the throttle. Throttle will be covered in a different video. Let's roll the intro and then let's look at how to configure the joystick. So first we need to go to the settings, right, which you can find in the top right corner. Then we go to the controls and there we will find the T1600 mic. You can see that there are two configurations. It's the general controls and the airplane controls. And depending on which aircraft you're selecting, there's the specific, let's say, configuration for the specific aircraft. Now, if you want to know what buttons have been configured, you can press on this button on the bottom. Now, if you want to know which buttons have been configured, you can press this button on the bottom right, which says filters assigned or essential. In this case, we want to see the assigned ones because those are the ones which are assigned. And here you can see interesting stuff, right? Because here you can see, okay, hey, these are, let's say, the buttons which have been assigned or the axes which have been assigned. And likely it will not 100% map the configuration which you would like to have. So what you see here is airplanes in digital and airplanes in axis, right? Airplanes in digital refers to a button. Airplanes in axis refers to an axis on the joystick. So if we scroll down, we can see also general and digital, which refers to that general section over here, where airplanes refers to the section over here. Now, what we also see is that if we look at the numbers here, that refers to the number of key bindings assigned to the sim control, right? If we look at this one, for example, it has also some other controls like the firefighting mission toggle, scoops or doors, decrease the door light switch, toggle spray, and toggle grapple hook. And that's not very useful, right? Could cause some issues. So what we're first going to do is we're going to create a new profile. To do that, we're going to click on the gear and then say duplicate. Because we don't want to mess up with the original profile, right? Because maybe in the future we decide to switch to that one, although I can't imagine that. And then we're going to say T1600 and then we call it MSFS custom. Don't select these buttons because then you apply to the all the aircrafts, and also don't apply this one unless you of course want to use these new profile as the default setting. The other thing which we're going to do is duplicate this one, right? Because we need to have two profiles, one for the general things like changing the view, and the other one for changing the specific aircraft settings, not specifically to one aircraft, but more specifically to all the aircrafts. So here you can see we did that. Now, if you made a mistake in the name, you can easily rename it by hitting this button, which is good. And that's all we don't need to know now. Now, how to get rid of these, I would say, configuration, right? Make sure that you select this profile and then press clear. It will give you a warning. It will say, hey, once you've done that, you can't go back. Well, that's fine for me. In this case, also the custom for this one, can remove it. And now we're clear, right? So we don't have any buttons assigned anymore. So we're going to go to filters and then set it to none, or you can set it to essential. But for now, we will switch to none because that's easier. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to configure, let's say, the buttons, right? Which are the buttons on the left side of the joystick. And if we start with the one on the left, you can see that buttons number 5 and 10, they're referred to, are used to increase and decrease the flaps, which we will find over here, right? So in this case, we're going to set decrease the flaps. We're going to set to button number 5. So simply press it. And increase the flaps, we're going to set it to button number 6, which is actually button number 10. I said number 6, but I meant number 10. That's the first thing. Now, the second row of buttons, we're going to use that for the trim up and down. So trim, search for trim. And then we're going to specifically set them for the elevator up and down. So search for this one, right? You can see the aileron trim. But what if you, let's say, are kind of scared of this, let's say, this long list, you can search specifically for one video. Or for one video, I said, for one function. So in this case, nose down, nose up, right? Trim up, trim down. Those are the buttons. Don't get distracted by that analog, because that analog also means that you can refer it to, let's say, a button. So in this case, nose down is button number 6, and nose up is button number 9. So that's good, right? So now these two have also been set up. Then the next part is the spoilers. So, need to type it correctly, spoilers. And the thing which is normally the setting, the default setting, is to toggle the spoilers, right? So if you look over here, you can see spoiler axis, which is you remove them. You can disarm the auto spoilers, arm the auto spoilers, set the auto spoilers, but those were not the ones we're looking for, because we want to toggle spoilers. And toggle simply means, hey, if you press it once, it will do something. And if you would press it again, it would do the reverse option. However, this one needs to be assigned to toggle spoilers, so we need to go a little bit further, and there we find the toggle spoilers. So if you press that option, then you can do that, and then you can press that magic button, button number 7. Then to toggle the parking brakes, that's the next button we need to assign, right? So search for parking brakes, in this case, parking brakes. Here we see the parking brakes, press the option again, and then press the option. That's button number 8. Now the left side has been done, we can continue with the right side, right? So the right side also contains some interesting functions. Not all of them have been configured, so you've got some buttons which you can still, let's say, use for your own say purpose, or for your own, what you think is logic, right? One of the buttons is button number 14 in this case, and that's to toggle the sim pulse, right? So toggle sim pulse, that's something you can do, or toggle active pulse. So the sim pulse is for the developer, so you shouldn't use it. But in this case, you can use either the toggle active pulse, and that will make sure that the time is frozen, but you can still interact with the plane. Or you can say toggle pulse, which results in that you go to the pulse menu. So in this case, I'm going to set it to toggle pulse, because that's the normal setting. However, if you want to say, for example, freeze the time, and also freeze the aircraft location, and then look around, then I would recommend you to use the toggle active one. So I'm going to press the button. Button number 14 has now been set. Then we're going to continue with the cockpit, right? Cockpit. The cockpit view and the external view. And that's this function on the top. It's cockpit/external view. You simply press the option again, and then press the corresponding button, which is button number 15. That's good. Which means that button number 13, 12, 11, and 16 don't have any function assigned. I'm going to leave it for now as is, but you can of course decide to assign it to some other functions which you might think are useful. We're going to go to the, let's say, joystick itself, right? So we need to, let's say, for example, configure those buttons on them, because button number 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are on that, say, joystick. The first thing which we need to do is button number 1, and that will toggle the smart camera, right? If you search for smart, then you will find the toggle smart camera, and you press the option again, and then press number 1. Number 1 is set correctly, so we can continue with the next button, which is button number 2, which shows you the rear camera view. So we're going to look at this. Rear. And then you can do the camera rear view. You can press it. But the nice thing about this one is that you can also set it to the quick view from the external view. In this case, it does not make sense that they're conflicting, because either you're in the aircraft or you're outside of the aircraft. So don't worry about this. You can do this without any issues. Then we, of course, got some other things like the quick view left or previous instrument view. Here you really need to, I'd say, select, right? That's the, let's say, a kind of mini joystick on top of the aircraft, not on top of the aircraft, on top of the joystick. And that's really where you need to think about, okay, hey, what do we need to do? And while I'm telling you this, I figured out that this button is actually the wrong button, right? So let's clear that also. So we're gonna delete this one. And also delete this one. Press the wrong button. Doesn't help, right? So let's go to the rear view. So we're going to simply push it down, which means it refers to path number, the path down. And then we've got the next pilot position / the external view. So we're going to search for view, which will give us a long list, as you can see, right? So you can see an extremely long list. But what I would recommend you to do is to switch it to the quick view up. And if you scroll down, you will also find a similar option for the external view. So the external view, you need to scroll a lot down and press the option over here, and then press the option. Again, you can see that I would say it says it's assigned twice, which makes sense because that's what they did. Then there's the next option, which is the cam quick view right or the next instrument view. Be aware that it's either right or left. So what I'm also going to do in this case is assign the button. And while we're discussing this is left, right? So I need to make sure that I'm pointing it to the correct direction. And this is the top, right? So make sure that you also set it like this. So left, rear, right, top. And then go back to the cockpit view, which is a little bit above here, up and rear. And then we've got right and left. That's how you can configure this. Now, of course, what you could decide to do is you could decide to switch to the instrument view, right? The instrument view, if we would look at the instruments, then we need to look, can we find it easily? Double check. Here we've got the instrument view left and right, but you also have the instrument view next and previous. So what you potentially could do is, for example, also assign these buttons to the previous instrument, which is then left, which makes sense, and then the next instrument, which would be right. However, there's one thing which you need to keep in mind, that you first need to activate the instrument view. If you don't do that, then it likely won't work. So you need to say, okay, hey, I want to toggle the instrument view. Now that's always a challenge, right? Because you can see that there are a lot of instrument views. So let me check which one it was. It was this one. By hovering the cursor on the edge of the screen. No, that's not the one. So we need to toggle the instrument view. At least I was expecting that one to be here. But let me do it a little bit easier. Instrument view. Where is it? I thought it was this one. But let's see if we select it and then see if it works. The other option to do to go into the instrument mode sounds weird, I know, but is to simply assign it to toggle instrument view 1, because then you're really in the, I would say, between brackets, instrument view already. So let's do that. So I'm going to assign it to button number 16 in my case. So that completes, let's say, the configuration of the joystick on the top, but also button number 16, which can be used then to switch to the instrument view. Think about that. What else do we need to do? We need to set up the brakes, right? So the brakes, that is been assigned to button number 3. So brakes over here, press the option button number 3. And then what did we miss? Did we miss something? Yes, of course, the landing gear. Landing gear. Toggle the landing gear, button number 4. So now we programmed, I would say, I think all the keys, but let's double check. So we're going to go to assigned, we're going to remove the filter, and here you can see everything which has been set up right now. You can see some conflicts, but again, that makes sense because we assigned some buttons, I would say, for multiple functions, and that shouldn't conflict with each other. Now, of course, we also need to configure the throttle, right? Because else I would say, we can't do much. So you can search for throttle, but if you do that and you forgot to remove the filter, like I did, then you won't find much. So either set it to essential or to none, and then go to the menu again, and that's where you will find the throttle. So the throttle, you can find the throttle axis, that's the one which you need to select, and then move that throttle, and then it will detect it, and then it's good. You're good to go. once you completed, of course, some other configurations. Because I would say if we're flying and we're using a joystick, then we also would like to have the uh, elevator trim. We already have it. But we also, of course, need to have the elevator axis, right? We want to use the elevator axis, which is L axis Y. And then we've got, let's say, the rest of the configuration. Let me find it. Where was it? We need to set another option, of course, because else we can't steer, right? Also makes sense. Because if you don't steer, it will be a little bit hard to fly. Let me, in this case, switch to the uh, essential options to see if we missed something. Control trimming, primary aileron left and right. That's the one which we need to configure, right? We want to set the aileron. So search for aileron and then search for the aileron axis. And then I'd say move the joystick and then it should be good to go. Now, of course, there are some things which you need to keep in mind that you need to test it prior to flying, right? So let's do that. So we're going to press exit, save back, and then we're going to select the free flight. Then we're going to select, well, you can either select this one, but I always like to test it with the Cessna. In this case, save and go back. And then let's select, let's say, a nice small airport. This one. It's really small. So we're going to put the aircraft on the spot, set as departure, then start the flight, and then we need to wait till everything loads. And you know, now that it sometimes takes a little bit more because it needs to load the content, and that's what you can see happening, right? You can see the aircrafts popping up, and then eventually it has enough content, it will zoom into the map, and then you are good to go and can, I would say, test if the joystick configuration is completed. So let's say wait, you can see that there are more details being added, and here it already is. It goes pretty fast nowadays compared to how it was previously. You can see that the person on the left side wasn't looking that good, but hey, it has also been corrected. And of course, what we need to do is we need to go inside the aircraft. So let's do that, right? So let's go inside the aircraft. For now, so I'll pick my other joystick because I will share some secret, right? I also have an Xbox controller connected to it because I do think that for walking, etc., that one is much easier to do. So tip for me, buy an Xbox controller because it's much easier and it allows you to configure a lot of other things also. Now let's have a look at what we gonna test. So first of all, right, the most easiest thing is to move the, let's say, yoke, and then also move the yoke back and forward. That all works fine, right? So I'd say we're in a good stage. At least the joystick works. Then we've got the smart camera control, which is likely like this. It will also work. Also very good. And then we've got that next view slash cam quick view left, which is this one. And right also works. Move to the top or front and then move to the back. And these are the ones which you can see, okay, are not, I would say, 100% working as we speak, because these were the ones which we assigned to the next pilot position and the previous pilot position. So it looks like that they're working, right? So it moves from the co-pilot to the pilot. So it also works fine. And then, of course, reset the camera view. And to reset the camera view, you can, for example, move it to a different direction and then press this option. In some case, you will see that it doesn't work. So then you need to go again to the control settings, right? I'm also doing it because I might have made a small mistake. Reset view. Reset view. Reset. Then search for view. Did we forgot to do it? I think we did, to be honest. Reset cockpit view. That's the one. We need to assign it to button number 2. And here you see that it tries to create a new profile, right? So if that happens, you can see that it is, oh, that's the reason it doesn't work. And that's something you need to be careful about, right? We set up the buttons, but it didn't work as expected. So make sure that you select the profile itself, right? So my mistake, I should have told you, in this case, once you created a profile, make sure that you set it again if you're in the aircraft, because else it won't work correctly. So let's go back and let's see if it still works, right? So this works and this also works. We can now look at the front and at the back. That's how we configured it. So now we know it's good. And our reset view still doesn't work. So likely we still need to go back to the menu and then make sure that we configure it correctly. So I'm going to search for it, right? Reset. View. No, see, we missed it. So let's do that. View. And then what you likely want to do is you want to assign it to two settings. One is the reset cockpit view, which is over here. Press the button. And also to the external view. And that's, I would say, makes sense, right? Because then you can also, let's say, switch outside of the aircraft to the button. So we're going to go back and then press the button. And now you see it resets correctly, right? So small mistake, but hey, it works. Then we're going to continue with some nice buttons over here, right? But then we're going to hide the yoke. First of all, we've got that parking brake, which we can set, right? Toggle the parking brake, and you can see that it works. So that's perfectly cool. We can increase and decrease the flaps, and they are hidden here, right? So look at this button, and that also works perfectly fine. Then we've got the elevator trim down. You can see that this one moves. So that's good, right? So the elevator now moves. It moves really slowly. Be careful with it in the air, right? Because then I would say else you get screwed. Toggle pause, we're not going to test it, but I would say switching to the external view, that one works. And if we would now move the button, right, you can see that we're moving into the different opinions or options which we have, and then we can switch again to the external view. But first, let's see if we can kind of say test the reset button again. That also works. So I would say we're almost good to go, right? Did we test everything? Not everything. We didn't test the landing gear itself, right? That's kind of hard to test, especially with this one. But of course, you can test it, but be careful with it. Don't only do it when you're in the air, because that, let's say, else, well, things go wrong, as you can imagine. Then think the only thing which we didn't check was the instrument view. So let's switch to the instrument view. And you can see that although we signed this, I would say, joystick on the top using multiple options, right? You can see that it now works perfectly until you hit reset. And then if you use it again, then use the left and right. So yes, you can assign multiple functions to the same button. That works. But be careful that you're in a different view mode because else it won't work. So what did we miss? Well, we missed one thing, and it's likely the most important thing, and that's the throttle. And as you can see, the throttle does act weird. And I did it on purpose because if you would have that issue, then the issue can be really resolved pretty easy because you can simply search for throttle, right? Go to that gear and then switch this button, insert set inverted axis. And if you now go back and likely if you move it now, it will work. In my case, it still doesn't work. And I've seen this behavior happening a few times also with other joysticks. I'm not sure if it's an issue with Flight Simulator or if it's an issue with the, I would say, with the joystick. I would say what will let your, I would say, will let you answer the question. But in that case, simply switch it off again and then try again. In most cases, that will fix the issue. So for now, it works, right? So now I can manage this one. So I've used the maximum of the joystick options which I have. Of course, we still have button number 13, 12, and 11, which you can use, for example, to switch on the battery or switch on the autopilot. Because those haven't been assigned yet. So that's something which you can relatively easy do. So let me show you those bonus options, right? Let's go to the settings and then show you how to do that. Go to the controls again, and then search for autopilot. And the autopilot, I would say, has a lot of options, of course. So you can see that there are, let's say, enormous amount of options. What you need to search for is if you place a toggle in front of it, toggle auto, then it makes it a little bit easier. And then you need to search for the toggle autopilot master, which is over here. And then we're going to assign that to button number, well, let's do it at 13. That's now being assigned. And that then what are other things like, for example, switching on the battery. Could also be a button, right? Master battery on or off. And then you can set it to the toggle. So make sure you press the option. And then, of course, last but not least, it might also be very useful if you can start the engine. So search for engine. You need to engine. You may need to make sure that you type it correctly. And then there are a few options, right? If you scroll to the bottom, you can say auto start engine, which will completely automatically start the engine. But if you like to challenge yourself a little bit more, then I would recommend you to use something else, which is that you need to search for start. And then you can set Magneto 1 to start. Don't ask me why you need to do it to set it to Magneto 1 start, because this is something I figured out. If you set it to Magneto's start, it won't work for some reason. Likely it's due to the fact that it would say that makes sense, right? So let's test those buttons again. So battery, right, that works. And then if we press the engine start button, you can see that the engine also starts. But it will not start correctly because, hey, we forgot to set this button to the correct position, right? Which will result in that the engine does not have, let's say, the right mixture, etc. And it will simply stop. But now you've got an idea how you can configure the joystick, right? So the last few things were a bonus. So you can configure it as I just showed, but of course you can also use different buttons. Here in this video where we discussed how to configure the joystick, the Thrustmaster T.16000M mic. Keep an eye on my channel if you want to see how we can configure the throttle axis, right? The throttle, which you can buy separately, but you can also buy it in combination with the joystick. So keep an eye on my channel for a video about that, because that one will be likely posted tomorrow. Again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're wanting more Flight Simulator 2024 content, then have a look at my channel because there's enough stuff. And also keep an eye on the community because I likely will post a new community post where I will announce when I'm gonna do a new live stream. Thanks again for watching for the third time and enjoy playing Flight Simulator, or if you're still on 2020, enjoy playing Flight Simulator 2020.